class is the very important aspect of every object-oriented programming language. And in this case, for me to explain to you, I kind of took this a little bit from Wikipedia because it was very nicely worded, and I simplified it a little bit. But a class is a template for creating objects. Think about it like that, right? So remember how we said that everything in JavaScript is an object? Well, almost everything. And how we said that, it's got methods, it's got data. Well, a class is something that defines how the data is created or how those methods are created, right? It defines that it's the template. It also provides initial values for the data, and it also implements the methods for those objects. And what that really does is that encourages a lot of reusability, because now we don't have to have a copy of every single object and try to create a new object with duplicating the methods. We simply create one class that's a template, and then we create the objects from that class. And I'll show you what that means with my fancy pointer, right here on the right hand side. You can see, for example, I have a class that we like to call a car, just a simple car, and that class has the following data. It has the following attributes, or we like to call initial values. It's a make, so the car's make, and it also has functions, drive and unlock. And those are very basic methods that define how a car behaves. But you can see that, for example, make is not really defined. Make is just simply, it's a variable. Same thing with this HP, that's horsepower. We're taking in some kind of a horsepower number, and that will go ahead and result in a different result. But then from this class, this template, we create an object called an Audi. Yes, an Audi car, right? And so obviously now this object contains the following. It contains the make, but now it has the value called Audi. Now it has the function drive as well, because remember that was taken from the class. And now we input the value 500 because it has 500 horsepower, which is crazy, which is a lot of horsepower, and it still has the same unlock function. So from this, you can tell how much that encourages reusability, because we can have this one class car, and we can have multiple objects of like Audi, Toyota, Volkswagen, any different object that you want that inherits this class right here. When I say inherits, it takes values and it takes methods from here. Let's get into examples, because that's the most exciting part. So remember how we created this object that's a user, that's a first name, last name, and it has certain functions like set password. Well, let's create a class for it and see how we reuse it, right? So if we go ahead and we create a class, to create a class is simply, you define a class like so. And instead of saying a class, no, we can still say class user. We say class user, like that, class user, and now we have ourselves a class. Now, obviously, it's empty, it's got nothing, it's useless, but it's something. Within a class, there's something called a constructor method. Just pay attention to that. A constructor method. Constructor method is something that initializes the values. So when I go ahead and I create a constructor method, I can actually pass in values for here. Think of this method as the first thing that gets called the second that you create a new object using this class. It's the first thing that gets called automatically. So we're going to pass in, for example, first name into here. Then we're going to pass in last name. And then we're also going to pass in, let's pass in user hobbies too. User hobbies, right there. And now inside here, we want to set the initial value using the parameters that we received from this constructor. So, and the way we do that is use something called the this keyword. And this keyword, if you think about it, it's literally this keyword specifies to this instance, this object. Think this object. So this object, but the value within this object, we want the this dot first name equals first name, right? Same thing, this dot last name equals last name, and then this then user hobbies. Now, technically, yes, we can do this. We can do using bracket notation. We can do user hobbies, just how we have it here. That's not a problem, but we don't like. It's just bad practice. Don't do it. We're just gonna do it in a nice way, in a nice clean way. Okay. we're gonna do it like professional developers, because we're professional developers, or we're getting there. So we're gonna say user hobbies, like so, equals user hobbies. And now what's gonna happen is this first name is gonna be assigned to this. Last name parameter is going to be assigned to this dot last name, and then user hobbies parameter is going to be assigned to this dot user hobbies, and that's it. And we can actually test it right now to see how that works out. So if we go ahead, we create a new class. Let's create a new class by John. So I'm going to say let John, because that's his name, John Davis, John equals, and now we want to create a new object. Remember, this class is a template. It's not an object yet. So what do you think we would do to create an object? Well, the syntax for it is something called new object. So in this case, new user. And inside here, we pass in the parameters, these first name, last name, user hobbies. So I'm going to pass in John, right? And then I'll pass in Davis. And then I'm going to pass in a list that has user hobbies. So I'm going to say soccer, and I'm going to say volleyball, right? And so these parameters are now going to go into the constructor, and then it's going to assign the first name, last name of this specific, think of an object called John, right? That's how we use this, because this is only related to John. It's not related to anything else. It's just John. And now let's go ahead and we can print this out. So let's console log it just so we see what's going on. So console.log John. See that? John. You can see it's a user, right? It's an object, right? And it has the following data. It's got first name, has last name, and then it has user hobbies. That's an array. And that's perfect. That just explains it so nicely. Now let's add some functions to it. To add a function, again, very simple. To add a function, we simply say, let's say we have function called, let's say get full name, right? So get full name equals, and we can also do it user arrow notation, get full name, and that returns the full name. So we will simply do, let's copy this for now. Let's copy that. Now we can't do user.first name, because what is user? We have no idea, right? It's just like I don't know. Well, instead of user, what you do is you simply just put in this. Remember how we said we have this, and this specifies to John, or in this case, yeah, that's John, and that gets the full name. Let's try that out. Let's see how that works out. So if I go ahead now and I do console log John dot get full name, that should print out the full name, no problem. John Davis, right there. Now, what we can even do, let's go ahead and create. We can do set password, but you already got my point. Let's go ahead and create another object. Let's go ahead and create, for example, let's just create Nazari. So I'm gonna say let Nazari equals new user, right? And Nazari has a name Nazari, has a last name Dumansky, and then it has hobbies. Oh, I got only one hobby, guys, and that's dancing. No, I got a few, but dancing is my favorite one. Dancing. There you go, like that. And now what we do is let's console.log. I'm gonna say this is Nazari. I'm gonna do it like that, comma, and then you do Nazari there, and that will console log the Nazari object right there. And now you can see that we have Davis. So I'm sorry, John, that has get full name function, first name, last name, has used certain user hobbies. We also have Nazari that also has the function get full name, right? And it has first name, but the first name and last name now here are different. And it has different user hobby. But it still contains the function that allows it, still contains a function that's a template for returning something, in this case, the full name. And so you can see, my friends, just how useful this is as we move forward into creating humongous applications, right? We created one template right here, and that template defines the values, it defines the data, it defines how the function should function, literally. And then we can use it to create different things, you see? And that, my friends, is classes.